Hi everyone, welcome. I will just give everyone a few minutes to jump on, but if you're watching the replay, just skip ahead a few seconds or a few minutes as people are jumping on. Welcome to this series. I'm just getting this camera a little bit right. It's like, hopefully that's it. I hope you are having the most amazing day ever. And of course, if you are not, my heart goes out to you, and hopefully things will change shortly and soon, and help arrives quickly. I wanted to come and do this series of 3 sessions because one of the conversations that I have been having recently is around radical responsibility around health. And it's come out of this space of people recognizing that they cannot rely on the powers that be to actually do the things that are in the best interest of their health. And if they want to be able to escape or to choose or have options outside of what is currently the mainstream version of healthcare or sick care, then they have to do stuff to be able to access that. Like, in order to be able to stay away from that as much as humanly possible. Now, I'm not saying we're ever going to be able to stay away from it, because we have accidents, we have emergencies, we have scenarios where we absolutely need that type of healthcare service for us. But when it comes to chronic health issues, when it comes to some simple things like colds and flus, when it comes to taking care of our health and preventing much of what those chronic illnesses are, then we need to take action, and we need to actually be responsible for our own health, instead of waiting for somebody else to come and rescue us and fix us after the fact. We actually need to jump on it at the beginning, and in the area of where it's created. So in the lifestyle space of before we actually get sick. And for those of you who don't know, welcome. My name's Christina. I'm a naturopath, herbalist, GAPS practitioner, life coach, and mentor for other healers. And also, I'm working with a company at the moment called Future Wellness Group. And that's exactly what we're looking at, is like, how do we stay well into the future? How do we take back our power when it comes to managing our health and looking after our bodies? And so, of course, I've been working in this space for a really long time now. And some of the things that I have come across with my own learning for, taking responsibility for my own health, as well as, with my patients that are starting to take those actions as well. And when you're jumping on, say hi, let me know you're here. I'd love to know you're here. Hashtag live vibes. Or if you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. Now, when it comes to taking radical responsibility, there are some major key areas that I see that we actually need to work in. And in order to be able to be super duper healthy and to be the best version of ourselves when it comes to our health and well-being, one of those main areas that I see that probably needs to come first is the mindset. So tonight's session is called Transform, and it is really about the renewing of the mind, because our actions come out of what we believe to be true about ourselves. So imagine this scenario. You're born into this world, beautiful, lovable, wonderful, amazing, spontaneous, like you don't hide. As a baby, if you are hungry, you cry. You don't learn to do that until, or not to do that until like later on in the journey. But that very first day, whatever you're feeling comes out of your mouth. You're not hiding it. You've not learnt to hide it. You've not done any of those things. You're spontaneous. You're inquisitive. You're excited. There's all of these beautiful things about you. And then the world starts to interact with you. Now, if you have amazing parents, then, they respond to the needs that you actually share, and they connect with you, and they engage with you, and they talk with you, and they encourage you all of the way. Now, most of us don't necessarily have amazing parents all of the time, because really they're human. They have human experiences, they have human feelings, they're tired and exhausted. And so sometimes they don't act always from that space of love. Sometimes they act from a space of frustration, anger, all of the things, just like all of us do, because we're human and that's part of our human experience in this planet. And so if you've got amazing parents that respond to you, let's say you are hungry and they feed you, you continue to actually let them know and continue that communication of I am hungry, and they continue to feed you at that point in time. However, inevitably what generally happens along the way is that we move from milk to solids. And as we move from milk to solids, we start to transition from I'm hungry and I'll eat, and when I'm not hungry, I'll stop eating, to it's now this time on the clock, and so now I'm going to eat because this is the time that food is allocated. Food is allocated at 7 a.m. in the morning or 10 a.m. in the morning or whatever time it is in your house that food was allocated. And then there's lunchtime and we're allocated food again. And then it's dinner time and we're allocated food again. You may get little snacks in between there, but we essentially move from this space of crying because we're hungry, being fed, stopping when we're full, to now we eat because the clock says it's time to eat, and getting into this routine of ignoring when I'm actually hungry and eating more because, well, it's going to be a while. Like, you know, the clock says we don't eat until this time next. So I need to make sure that I've got enough to get me through to that next time. So we'll eat more and, you know, try and conserve some of that food. Now, this is just one little phrase of conditioning that comes through our lives. That one little phrase around when we eat, when food's available, what food is available to us, depending on the culture that we've been brought up in, and whether that's good for our physiology or not is completely irrelevant. We get used to that conditioning. Now, that's just one level of conditioning. We have so many levels of conditioning from the moment that we're born and even before we're born. So when we're in utero, we actually receive some level of conditioning based on the hormones that our mother experiences while she's pregnant with us. So she is in a state of stress while she is pregnant with us. She's going to release more adrenaline. And that's going to give us information that the world outside is not safe and we need to be ready to come out fighting. If she's in a state of peace for the majority of that time, then we're going to come out more peaceful, because the hormones that we receive through that placenta are going to be different as well. And then as we move through and we're born, we actually start to receive messages from our magical big people. Now, your magical big people can be anyone from your parents to older siblings, to uncles and aunts, to school teachers, people who have significant authority over you in your life. So our magical big people are often first considered to be our parents, sometimes their grandparents, depending on the family arrangement that you were born in. Those magical big people have their own conditioning. And for some of them, they had conditioning like children are to be seen and not heard. Some of their conditioning was good girls or good boys behave in this way. And so what they aim to do, not necessarily consciously, but subconsciously, is to actually teach you the rules of the world that they live in. Now, those rules may change. Those rules may be stupid. Those rules may be wrong. Those rules may be all sorts of different things. But they aim to teach you the rules that they know to help you survive in the world. That's if you've got healthy parents. Now, if you have unhealthy parents, some of the rules that they're teaching you is you need to make me happy because that's why we had you, so that you can make me happy. And the child is born with a role to play, and their role is to keep the parent happy. Or I'm so sad that I need a therapist, so you're now going to be my therapist. And we make the child take on the role of taking care of the magical big person in a therapeutic space. Now, there's all sorts of different things, and I'm just giving it just a really small amount of them because we would be here forever and a day if I was to go through all of them. But essentially, I hope you get the picture that you're born into this world, beautiful, lovable, wonderful, and enough. And nothing changes with that. You are still beautiful, lovable, wonderful, and enough, and completely acceptable. But somebody lied to you. Those magical big people who are already hurting because they don't believe they're wonderful, lovable, and enough, mirror to you that you also are not wonderful, lovable, and enough. And so you start to learn that. And then you start to learn, in order for me to be lovable, I have to do X, Y, and Z. And that X, Y, and Z might be, I need to be quiet. That X, Y, and Z might be, I need to not be seen. That X, Y, and Z might be, I need to suppress my feelings because the magical big people can't cope with me having feelings. So I need to suppress those feelings. And out of those messages that you take away, we start to create beliefs around ourselves, values around ourselves, and then we create actions around ourselves. So, for example, if you took on that message of, I need to be quiet so that I'm not upsetting the magical big people, I need to not be seen, I need to be hidden, then you become suppressed. And as you become suppressed, you might use tools like food to help you suppress things. I was having a conversation today with some beautiful practitioners over in the US, and we were talking about energetic medicine. And one of the things that we're talking about again is this subconscious patterning that we create through childhood and then into adulthood, and that we think is actually us. We think that that's how our personality is because that's how we've learnt to behave. We think that's who we are, but actually it's the conditioning that we've learnt to stay safe in the environment that we're in. And one of the tools that people use is consuming sweet food to bring sweetness into their life, because they're missing sweetness. They're missing that sweet, luscious love that they are yearning for. And so in order to bring some semblance of that into their life, we crave sweet food to bring that in. It's the same as people who struggle when it's really like, when we start to create something, like they might come and join me for doing things like the GAPS diet, and they really struggle because they're like, there's no crunch, there's no variety, there is. If you have the imagination, you can create variety, but when you're thinking that there's no variety, there is no variety. And when you're in that state of a thought process, you can feel like you're lacking adventure. And that is because instead of having adventure in their life, the food is the adventure. And that's not necessarily bad. You can definitely be adventurous in your life. But when you're trying to heal your body, sometimes you need to be very consistent with what you're actually feeding it and what you're actually giving it. And the message there for them is that they actually need to bring more adventure into their actual life. They need to go and do things that they've never done before. They need to experience things or have conversations with people or engage with people and actually create adventure in their life that isn't just the food that they've been eating. And what I'm hoping to bring together for you today is that when we're looking at the patterns in our lives, so if we're wanting to make great change in our lives, whether it be with food, whether it be with our health, whether it be with our bodies, whether it be with anything that we want to do, we have to start with the mind. Because if you believe that you are a certain thing, or if you believe that you're not worthy, or you believe that you're not allowed to have that thing for all sorts of different reasons, whether it's conditioning in your childhood or something that's happened much later, if you believe that to be the truth around you, then that will be the truth around you. Because actions are first created in the mind, which is why the first step of taking radical responsibility for your health is to start with the renewing of your mind. Because what you think, you become. If you think that you are ugly, fat, etc., whatever name you were given in high school or whatever thing you heard when you were growing up, like lazy, etc., worthless, whatever they were, that's what you will become if you don't interject that mindset, if you don't do something about it, if you don't actually pattern interrupt and break some of those patterns. I know Dr. Carolyn Leaf talks about this quite a lot, which is, neuroplasticity and training pathways. So I'll give you an example. And for me, I remember when I was a little kid, I used to ask the people around me, do you think I'm pretty? Like as a little 4 or 5-year-old, probably even a little bit younger, do you think I'm pretty? And I was looking for somebody in the outside world to reflect back to me that yes, they thought I was pretty. That's what I was looking for. But what I received was, yeah, you're pretty, pretty ugly. And that was a message that I received back. Now, as children, one of our amazing skills that's not necessarily beneficial to us, one of our amazing skills is to actually turn scenarios around to make it about us, because we're egocentric. As children, our brain is set up in an egocentric way. It's just how our brain develops. There's nothing wrong with it developing that way. It's just how it is. And in our egocentricness, we actually are looking for the world around us to tell us and to mirror back to us what we want to believe to be true about us. And in this scenario, I was wanting somebody to tell me that I was pretty. And what I received was the opposite. This message that I am pretty ugly. And in my egocentricness, I took that on and I claimed that as who I am. So I claimed it as who I am. I'm pretty ugly. And so as I grew up, people would say things to me like, oh, Christina, you would be so pretty if you just lost weight. So what happened? Well, in my brain says, well, I'm pretty ugly. I'm not pretty. So if I lose weight and I'm going to be pretty, I can't lose weight. I need to gain weight. And so my body would go about gaining weight because I'm not pretty. I'm pretty ugly. And that was the subconscious belief that my brain held on to. And so anytime people would give me compliments or say things to me that would be in any sort of way interpreted as pretty, my subconscious patterning would be, hang on, nope, we're not pretty. That's not our identity. That's not who we are. I'm now going to do the opposite of what you say because our identity is pretty ugly. So if you've been watching my page here, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I actually shared a message. I shared a letter that I wrote to myself, which is goodbye, pretty ugly. And I wrote a breakup letter to that identity that I had taken on as a little 4 or 5-year-old and had subconsciously carried forward. Now, the reason I share this is because I hope it starts to trigger within you some of those messages that you have received. Some of those little voices that are in your head, some of those things that somebody has said to you along the way. And when you step back, you can see that it has become a self-fulfilling prophecy where you have subconsciously started to fulfill that prophecy of the words that were spoken over you. And this is why words are really important. Because the words that are spoken over you and the ones that you take meaning from and you create meaning out of and then you subconsciously walk out, they are what create your experience in life. And so when we start to take radical responsibility for our health, one of those first steps that we need to do is start to come back to the renewing of the mind. What are the subconscious beliefs that I have believed about myself to be true that actually aren't true? That actually are more about the person who said them than they are about the person who received them. What are those beliefs that you have taken on to be true about you that actually aren't true? And as an adult, I can sit back and I can look at the scenario of, the 4 or 5-year-old that's asking, is she pretty? And the response coming back, which is pretty ugly. I can look at that and I can see that was just, it was just childhood stuff. It was not meant in a nasty, mean way. It was not meant in a way that was going to condition me for my life. It was not meant in any of those ways, but that is how it was taken. So I'll give you another example of this. So 2017, I remember I was coming to the end of my naturopathy qualifications, and I was like, right, this year I'm finishing naturopathy and it's all going to be about health. Like I'm going to focus on my health. I'm going to be, amazingly, vibrantly healthy at the end of this and like all the things. Now, as I went through the year, like I did everything. I changed my password to health. I changed, like I put 2017 equals health, like, put it everywhere so that I would be constantly feeding that into myself, doing all the things that I knew to do when it came to manifestation. And I think it was around September, so it took me like a good half the year at least to try and to figure this out. And I got to the end of the year almost, and I started to go, what is going on here? Like, what is going on? Because I was in a worse state of health than I was at the beginning of the year. And I found myself constantly attracted to things like Tim Tams and chocolate cake and everything that I knew that I didn't want to be eating. It was like, oh my God, I just want to, like, craving it like no tomorrow. And it wasn't until I was driving along one day and I was just sitting with this and I was going, hang on, what is going on here? Because, like, you know, I really value health. It's one of my top values. I focused on it this year. I did all the things that I normally would do to manifest whatever it is that I want to manifest in my life. And, I did all those things. And why is this happening? And the light bulb, my children in the background, please ignore them. It's what happens when you have 7 kids and you're trying to do a live stream. And it's bedtime and they're not in bed yet. So hopefully you can't hear them too much. But I got towards September and I was asking myself that question. I was like, what is going on here? Because, I'm doing all the things and it's not working. What's happening? And as I was driving along, it started to drop into my spirit what had actually happened was that I had picked this word health and I was going after health. And as I reflected back to 2013, and I was brought back to that moment in 2013 where I had my trauma birth, where my baby was born in a traumatic situation. I had placenta previa and then I had placenta precreta. So my placenta had gone and eaten through my uterus and into my major blood supply and into my bladder. And I lost tons and tons of blood. It worked out to be that they replaced my blood volume 16 times over. And so there was a lot of blood that was happening. My heart stopped beating. They had to resuscitate me and bring me back. Like, there was a whole lot of stuff that took place in that. And I was brought back to that moment. And directly before that pregnancy, my husband and I and my whole family had been doing the GAPS diet very, very strictly. We were super duper good at it. Like, we had not had anything like takeout at all for a good 12 months at that point in time. I was the healthiest I'd been. I'd lost a ton of weight. I was feeling really vibrant. I had tons of energy. Like, life was really good. And then I fell pregnant with my twins at that point in time. We lost one of the twins. I had placenta previa, so I had lots of bleeding. We always had to go check to see if I had a live baby. So there was like a whole lot of stress that came directly after that, including the birth in which I died. And my body was reminding me of this, that at my most healthiest, that is when I went through my most traumatic event that nearly killed me. And my body had been keeping the score. My body had taken that message that health equals death. Now, logically in my head, I know that that's not the case. And logically in my head, I can logic the crap out of that and go, no, that has nothing to do with it. Me being at my healthiest had nothing to do with the scenario that had happened with that pregnancy and then the delivery. The two were not connected in any way, shape, or form. But my body didn't understand that message. My body just knew that we were the healthiest and then we nearly died. So health is dangerous. It's going to cost us our life. And so we don't want to go anywhere near health. And so subconsciously, as I was trying to create health for my body was trying to fight health because it had connected it with death. And it was keeping that score. And it was remembering that. Even though the two were not necessarily logically connected, that was the messaging that my body had received. And so subconsciously, in order to be able to go after health, that wound needs to be healed. That conversation with my body needs to be healed. That conversation with the magical little person that still lives inside of me that has that egocentric thinking needs to be healed. And the conversation with her had to go along the lines of, oh, honey, I can see how you would think that. There is so much love there for you for thinking that. That's not the truth. But I can see how you formulated that. I hear you in that. And I need to teach you something different. And part of my journey then was to think of different words, because health wasn't going to cut it for me. And look at things like Nourish, and look at other beautiful words that actually spoke to my magical little person, that spoke to my body, that felt really good and juicy, versus health. And again, when we're coming back to this place of taking radical responsibility for our health, we have to start with the renewing of the mind, because the actions that we take come out of our subconscious thinking. And yes, we can do something for a short period of time. Like, we can willpower ourselves to eating the healthy food and not eating the sugar and doing all those things for a certain length of time. We all have some willpower. Sometimes that willpower is a little, sometimes that willpower is a lot. But depending on the individual, depends on how strong that willpower is and for how long that can last. But the willpower will always run out. And if you're willpowering your way to health, what will happen is it will run out, and you'll start to have thoughts like, I'm depriving myself of things. I'm in a state of deprivation. I'm missing out. I'm lacking. And you get into this space of lack, deprivation, missing out, etc., because it's coming out of the willpower. I've got to hold on really tight. I'm white knuckling this ride to get to the place of health, versus actually, if I love myself, I don't tolerate putting stuff in my body that's not good for me. I don't tolerate the garbage. I don't tolerate the crap, because I love myself too much to do that damage to me. And as we go through the mind setting, the renewing of the mind, and we create that self-love, we actually create actions that are self-loving as well. Actions that are nourishing to us, actions that are good for us, because we believe that we are worthy of having those. We believe that we have value, and we believe that we're allowed to have those things. And so for me, this is where I do the work in Unlimited, which is, that renewing of the mind, starting to go through the subconscious patternings and actually look at what are the stories of my life and what are the meanings that I've taken away from those things. What are the patterns? What are the rules in my life? What are the rules around love? What are the rules around what I'm worth? What are the rules around what other people are worth? What are the rules around who I'm allowed to be, how I'm allowed to show up, all of those things. And as we connect into what those rules are, and we connect into the stories and the meanings that we've given ourselves, we then can start to change the way that we think and feel about ourselves. And I remember for myself, one of the best gifts that I gave myself was this thought that I am absolutely amazing, that I am absolutely wonderful and amazing. And I had to talk myself into it. I had to talk myself into believing that I was wonderful and amazing. And it took time, and it took me getting to the space of, Christina, you are the most amazing person that there is. You are wonderful. You are a beautiful creation. You're magnificent. You are a delight to be around. You are amazing and wonderful. It's a privilege to spend time with you. It's a privilege to spend time with you. It is an absolute privilege to spend time with you, because you are amazing, wonderful, lovable, all of the things. Like, I had to talk myself into that to get to that place of fully starting to accept that I am amazing, wonderful, lovable, and enough. And that has never changed. That has always been the truth. It's just that I believed the lie. I had believed the lie from hurting people, because hurt people hurt people, and healed people heal people. And so as I start to heal myself, and as I've been healing myself, I then heal others, because healed people heal people. Healing people provide healing for other people. Hurt people hurt people. And as we move away from being hurt, we move into healing. We're able to bring some beautiful gifts to the world, and we're able to see who we are, and we're able to see how amazing we actually are, and we're able to start to change the subconscious patterning that creates the actions that we take. And so when we're looking at that first step of taking radical responsibility, it comes with a renewing of the mind. And the renewing of the mind has multiple different layers to it. One of these layers that has been coming for me and sort of downloading for me for quite some time now, for the last couple of years, is some of the patterns and subconscious cultural things that we have around food. And so when I'm working with my GAPS patients, one of the things that they have to learn inevitably is that social situations tend to change a little bit. So for some of them, they'll avoid social situations. Others, they will change and transform that into different ways. So for me, when we were doing GAPS, one of the things that I would do, instead of going to other people's houses to eat or to go to restaurants or whatever, I would invite people to our house, and I would just provide, GAPS food. And I would provide, the best, nourishing, delicious, tasty, so food that they could actually have. And I knew that everything on the table would be fine for us to eat. My kids could eat it. It would be totally fine. The other thing that we did was actually start to transform the fact that when I'm having a coffee with a friend, like if they were asking me out to go to a cafe for coffee, the purpose of that is not to have the coffee. Like, the coffee is the vehicle that we use to actually create the relationship and to have that relationship experience. And it's not important whether I'm drinking the coffee or not drinking the coffee. The important part is the relationship experience. And so I can then transform that. And when I understand that the purpose of the actual coffee date is not for the coffee and the cake, it's actually for the relationship, I can show up there and have something like a green tea or a herbal tea, and it be totally fine, because I'm not there to have coffee and cake. I'm there to be with my friend. I'm there to connect with them. I'm there to spend time with them. And our conversations become deeper, and our conversations become more connected, because we're there for the conversation versus being there for the food. And when we start to see those things as, when we're connecting as gathering, as what is our actual purpose for being there, and that is to connect with these people, to celebrate with these people. And we can celebrate with our words. We can celebrate with, congratulating people. We can celebrate with dancing. We can celebrate in all sorts of different ways that don't necessarily include putting food into our bodies that is not healthy and happy for us. That's going to make us feel sick. That's going to be detrimental to us. So that's one aspect of the transforming and the renewing of the mind. Another aspect is this thought. There is this messed up thing in our lives that, like, our neurology and our brain and our body knows when things aren't good for us. It knows when things aren't good for us, and it therefore translates that into messages of, this is not good for us. And so one of those scenarios that many of us grew up with was, if you do this, I will give you a lolly. And, way back when, that lolly would have been a piece of fruit, or it might have been the really odd occasion, like a sugar lolly. But now we have it so readily available to us that it is like, you go to the shop and it's relatively cheap to buy a packet of lollies. It's relatively, inexpensive to do those things. And we have sugar on tap. Like, it's available all of the time. And so now when we have this scenario of, like, if you do this, I'll give you a reward, which is a lolly, our subconscious brain knows that this lolly is not good for us. It knows it's not going to be great for our body. It knows that it's essentially going to be poisonous for our body. And I'm putting it in these particular words so that you can kind of see the scenario. So your magical big person goes, oh, you've done such an amazing job. Well done. Here's the thing. And if that magical big person is giving a lolly as the thing, what happens is we stuff up our neurology a little bit, or they help to stuff up our neurology a little bit, because we get the thing of, like, you're a good girl, you're amazing, you've done a great job, here's some poison. And it's like being given the poison apple, that we go, oh, this looks delicious, it looks tasty, it looks all of these things. But internally, our subconscious knows this is poison to us. This is not good for us. It's going to make us feel sick. We're going to have to do work to actually detox and cleanse this out of us. This isn't good for us. So we get this message of being a good girl, but we're poisoned for being a good girl. For doing the thing that they want us to do, we get being poisoned for it. And it messes with our neurology, because we end up with these cross messages and these messages that aren't necessarily good for us. And then that's what we carry out in our life. Like, when I'm being good, I need to be poisoned, or I need to receive something bad for things being good. And then we end up with this mixed message and these neurological pathways that are not serving us. And so, you'll see it all the time, or you might even recognize it in your own life. Oh, I've just had a hard day at work. I've done all these amazing things. I deserve a reward. And that reward is something that's going to make you sick. Like, logically, if you sit down and you think about it, you go, that doesn't even make sense. Why would I do that to myself? But subconsciously, that is the patterning that we have received and we've been handed down within the conditioning of our family cycle, our cultural cycle, all of those things. And so we just continue those unless we change them, unless we renew our mind, unless we start to do the internal work that is required to uncondition ourselves to the conditioning that we've received. And remembering that the magical big people in that scenario did not intend bad things for you. That was not their intention. But what happened, the result of it, is not necessarily good for you. And in order to actually start to take radical responsibility for ourselves and our health, we have to start to uncondition ourselves around the world and the culture that we've been living in, and ask those tough questions. Do I want this? Do I want to carry this forward? Do I want to teach this to my children? Or do I want something different? And if I want something different, I have to think something different, because our thoughts create the actions that we take. Our thoughts are the vehicle to create the world that we live in. And if we want a different world, if we want to experience different things, we have to think different thoughts. And that can be challenging because our brain is set on this, our brain likes to put things on autopilot. So as much as it possibly can, it wants to set and forget. And so just like a well-worn path in a field, let's say you've got a field in front of you and you can see this well-worn path where people have been walking, animals have been walking, there's a track laid before you. That track is the conditioning that you currently have. Now, in order to have a different track or a different conditioning, we need to tread new ground. We need to tread a new pathway through the field. And that requires you to get into a conscious state to be able to do that, because you have to consciously choose to walk the new track. And you have to consciously choose to walk the new track until the new track is completely worn in and the old track is growing over with grass. Because your subconscious brain will automatically want to go to the old track because it's easy. It doesn't have to think. There's no energy that it has to use in order to be able to walk on that old track. It requires energy and focus and attention to walk the new track until it doesn't. And until it gets to the point where that is the well-worn track, until that is now who you are. Now that is who your identity is. Your identity is the new track. And that takes time and that takes conscious thinking to be able to get to that space. And so again, that first step in taking radical responsibility is to start to change your mind, to start to transform the thoughts that you have, to stop avoiding the pain that you're experiencing and look at it and see it and face it and recognize that it's maybe not as scary as you think when you have help. And that is, why I create the courses that I create, is why I offer the things that I offer, so that you don't have to do that by yourself. That's what Unlimited is about doing the mindset of transforming your mind together with a group of people, so you're not doing it alone. And we do it for the 4 months because it takes time to change your mind. It takes time to renew the thoughts, and you don't renew them all at once. You renew some of them. And then you get a good handle of those, and then you renew some more and you change some more. But ultimately, in order to get to that space where you take the actions that are loving, kind, and generous for yourself, you have to get to the place where you start to believe that you are worthy of having people be kind to you, or you being kind to you, that you're worthy of loving, you're worthy of generosity, you're worthy of all of the things, and then you're enough. You have to believe those things to be true about yourself to be actually able to consistently take those actions. And so this is why this is that first in the series of 3 around taking radical responsibility for your health, the renewing of your mind. Because as we think, we are. Those words that were spoken over us as kids become the self-fulfilling prophecies because they are trapped in our subconscious. And until we start to look at them and until we start to face them, they become the messages that we live our life out of. Just like when I was talking about, myself being pretty ugly, I would do the things that would make me pretty ugly. When I changed that belief, I'd take different actions. And that is that first step of transforming and renewing the mind and taking radical self-care, taking care of your own health. And it's one of those things that I see with mothers all of the time, where I see that they want to take care of their kids' health, but they're not valuing their own. They're not putting themselves first. And it is that whole thing of you put your own face mask on first in the aeroplane before you oxygen mask on, before you then help your children. Because if you pass out from lack of oxygen, they don't have anybody to help them. And the other element is your children watch you far more than they listen to you. They watch what you do far more than what they listen to you. And they follow what you do far more than what you tell them to do. And they are little monkeys. So they will copy the big monkey. And they will copy you. So if they see you not loving yourself, if they see you not valuing your health, they too will emulate that. They too will copy that. And if you want better things for them, you need to press forward into having better things for you. If you want to have better quality health for them, you need to represent that, and you need to demonstrate that, and you need to model that by having better health for you. And that first step in better health starts with that transforming and renewing of the mind. And we talked about this a lot when we were doing Divinely Nourished, about how important our mindset is to creating the life that we want to have, whether it be the wealth, whether it be the family, whether it be the health, whether it be any of those things that we want. It starts with, how do we think? What do we think? And how do we nourish ourselves mentally? And what are we doing? And what support do we actually need? What resources do we need to help us take that path from the old path that we've well worn into the new path that we want to well worn? We want to make our new normal. We want to make it the thing that is part of our identity of who we are. It takes time to do that. All right, I'm going to leave it there today. I will see you tomorrow if you want to come and join me for part 2, and then Sunday for part 3 of the steps and the actions to take for taking radical responsibility for your health. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, feel free to pop them below. I am more than happy to come back and answer them. I would love to have this conversation and continue this conversation with you. If you want to come and join me in things like Unlimited, which is starting on Monday, where we do 4 months of transforming and renewing of the mind, looking at your subconscious patterning, bringing the subconscious to the conscious and making changes, you're welcome to come and join me in that. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow for the next chapter in the radical transformation of your health. All right, bye for now. And I will see you tomorrow. See you later.